Last night, the Rules Committee met and produced a rule, H.Res. 1247, providing for the House's consideration of several pieces of legislation. The rule provides for H.R. 4763, the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, to be considered under a structured rule. It provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their designees, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Additionally, the rule also provides for H.R. 5403, the Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC, Anti-Surveillance State Act. H.R. 5403 would be considered under a structured rule, and it also provides for 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their designees, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Finally, the rule also provides for consideration of H.R. 192, a bill which would prohibit non-citizens from voting in elections in the District of Columbia, to be considered under a closed rule. It also provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability or their designees, and provides for 1 motion to recommit. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this rule and in support of the underlying pieces of legislation, beginning with H.R. 4763, the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, or FIT 21. Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad that the rule provides for consideration of this legislation. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, we've spent countless hours trying to develop a responsible regulatory structure for blockchain technology and digital assets. These conversations have become increasingly necessary as regulators like the Securities and Exchange Commission have failed. Instead of developing a targeted and purposeful framework that would promote innovation and protect consumers, they have led with regulation by enforcement action. This approach threatens the United States' leadership in the future of digital assets, a future that could better protect privacy, reduce business costs, and empower more Americans. This flawed approach by the SEC has required congressional action, and FIT 21 is the joint response of the Financial Services Committee and the Agriculture Committee. FIT 21 establishes a framework consistent with existing law, but also appropriate for the digital assets in question and their unique characteristics. First, there is no clear current market structure for the regulation of digital assets in the United States. The SEC has merely been regulating by enforcement action. This leaves digital asset innovators and consumers to play a guessing game. This not only stifles innovation, it lends itself to the SEC picking winners and losers. Meanwhile, there's currently no way for digital asset commodities to be registered or regulated by the CFTC. Chair Gensler has repeatedly said most digital assets are securities. However, by his own admission, we know that not all digital assets are securities. In fact, it's estimated that 70% or more are commodities. This is among the most important reasons for the passage of FIT 21. The SEC does not regulate commodities. It regulates securities. The CFTC does not regulate securities. It regulates commodities. The advent of digital assets, which can be either securities or commodities, has created a regulatory black hole that FIT 21 seeks to remedy. By defining digital asset commodities and securities and creating a clear regulatory market structure, FIT 21 protects consumers and provides the regulatory clarity for digital asset developers to innovate. The framework offered by FIT 21 will give clear guidance to regulators and thus allow consumers to better judge digital assets for themselves, avoid scams, reduce instances of data theft, and lessen the potential for market manipulation. FIT 21 is good for our constituents and good for the country. I encourage all of us to support this important legislation. Moving on to H.R. 5403, the Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC, Anti-Surveillance State Act. I'm a proud original co-sponsor of H.R. 5403 because I share the concerns of many of my colleagues about the consequences of a Federal Reserve Bank digital currency and what that could mean for our constituents and their privacy. If issued, a government-controlled CBDC would give federal bureaucrats the ability to track every transaction Americans make, as well as the ability to block any transaction they so choose. This would be an unprecedented level of surveillance in the daily lives of everyday Americans, and we should all be concerned about the potential threats to individual rights and privacy. A CBDC would give the government the power to shut off access to payments and freeze the bank accounts of law-abiding citizens and institutions for political reasons, just like we saw with the Canadian trucker protests or with Operation Choke Point. I hope all of my colleagues will join me in standing against the creation of a central bank digital currency by supporting this bill. Finally, this rule also provides for consideration of H.R. 192, a bill which would prohibit non-citizens from voting in the elections in the District of Columbia. Americans are rightly concerned with election integrity. Free and fair elections are essential to any democracy. We all agree on that. What we should also agree on is that non-citizens voting in elections undermines confidence in elections. It's why the District of Columbia's Local Residents Voting Rights Amendment Act is so objectionable. It allows non-citizens to vote in D.C. elections, including illegal immigrants and foreign agents. It goes without saying that these individuals in particular have interests that are at odds with our own. They literally represent the interests of other countries, including countries hostile to the United States. Why would we want to allow Russian or China or any foreign agent to vote on policies that impact the U.S. Capitol? It defies logic, but that is exactly what D.C. has inspired to do. My colleagues might ask why we even have an interest in the affairs of local laws in this respect. The answer is quite simple. D.C. has a unique and constitutional relationship with the United States Congress. A lack of confidence in American elections anywhere threatens the confidence in American elections everywhere. It is incumbent upon us to protect the integrity of D.C. elections. When the district's elected officials fail to do so, when they allow non-citizens and people with loyalty to other countries to vote. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to consideration of these three important pieces of legislation and urge the passage of this rule. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Indiana reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentlelady from Indiana for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, there's really not much to say. If you were to listen to my friend on the other side, you'd think that these bills are going to change the world the second the ink dries, but they're not. This is just another week of wasted time. More of the same from the Republican leadership here in Congress that is completely out of touch with what the American people actually care about. H.R. 192 is another GOP attempt to meddle in D.C. politics. They spend more time worrying about Washington, D.C. than they do about their own constituents. And it's astounding to me that the party that claims to care about small government and local control wants to have the federal government tell local leaders here in D.C. how to run their local elections. Apparently, they're for local control unless it's local control by Democrats, in which case, never mind. And to hear anybody on the Republican side talk about election integrity is rich, especially from a party that is filled with election deniers. We are also here to consider H.R. 4763, a bill that provides an upper hand to the crypto industry instead of meaningfully addressing gaps in digital asset regulation. And finally, we will meet on H.R. 5403, a bill that prevents the U.S. from exploring digital currency. Now, I know my friends on the other side of the aisle are afraid of innovation, but 130 countries representing 98% of global GDP are looking into digital currency. Maybe, just maybe, it's something we should look into as well. Unfortunately, I think some of my friends on the other side want to go back to stone tablets. It's our job in Congress to address the privacy concerns, not to bury our heads in the sand and pretend like the world isn't moving forward. Mr. Speaker, it's all stunts instead of solutions, extremism over bipartisanship, and it's really a shame. This narrow majority could have given us a chance to work together in a bipartisan way. But instead, my friends over on the other side of the aisle have pandered to their most extreme members over and over and over again. They let the extremists kick out their own speaker. They let the extremists dictate the agenda on the House floor. They let the extremists take down 7 rule votes since January 2023, a stunning indictment of their ability to get anything done. And speaking of indictments, Republicans are skipping their real jobs to take day trips up to New York to try to undermine Donald Trump's criminal trial. No time to work with Democrats, but plenty of time to put on weird matching cult uniforms and stand behind President Trump with their bright red ties and like pathetic props. Maybe they want to distract from the fact that their candidate for president has been indicted more times than he's been elected. Maybe they don't want to talk about the fact that the leader of their party is on trial for covering up hush money payments to a porn star for political gain, not to mention 3 other criminal felony prosecutions he's facing. Now, I understand why my Republican friends want to distract from Donald Trump. They don't want to talk about how Trump had the worst jobs record since the Great Depression, how he sold out our allies and empowered our adversaries. So they bring silly things like this to the floor to deflect blame and distract from the fact that they have no real vision, just division, and no real plans to make life better for the American people. And with that, I reserve my time.
The chair would like to remind members to refrain from engaging in personalities towards presumed nominees for the office of the president. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to note that the bury the head in the sand approach is the very approach that Chairman Gensler has been taking with regard to the regulation of digital assets. Our colleagues seem to be less concerned about getting a regulatory framework for consumer protection and are hurrying to put in a central bank digital currency for digital surveillance. With that, I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Indiana reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, a few moments ago, I was admonished for stating the simple fact that the former president was indicted by a grand jury and is on trial in a court of law. That's not my opinion. It's just the truth. So I have a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, has the chair determined it's unparliamentary to state a fact?
The chair is not in a position to determine the veracity of remarks made on the floor.
Well,
that members must avoid personalities.
yeah, well, that's unbelievable. Last week during debate, a Republican member of this House said, and I quote, "Watch the former president of the United States being hauled into court day after day with a sham trial," end quote. He wasn't admonished. I just referenced the same trial, and I was. So, Mr. Speaker, I have to ask a further parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman will state his inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it correct that members of Congress can mention the trial of the presumptive nominee for president, call it a sham, and question the integrity of the judge, but a reference to the mere existence of that same trial without any characterization that's out of order?
The chair will not issue an advisory opinion.
Well, one last parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Is this restriction originally founded, at least in part, on the principle in Jefferson's manual that, quote, in Parliament, to speak irreverently or seditiously against the king is against order, end quote? Is that what this is about? I have Jefferson's manual here.
Members must avoid personalities in debates. The chair will direct members to Rule 17 in Section 370 of the House Rules and Manual.
Yeah. So it is, in fact, based on what's in Jefferson's manual. Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump might want to be a king, but he's not a king. He is not a presumptive king. He's not even the president. He's a presumptive nominee. And I know you're trying to do your job and follow precedent, but frankly, at some point, it's time for this body to recognize that there is no precedent for this situation. We have a presumptive nominee for president facing 88 felony counts, and we're being prevented from even acknowledging it. These are not alternative facts. These are real facts. A candidate for president of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He's also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He's also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet, in this Republican-controlled House, it's okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham.
We take down his words.
It's okay to say the jury is rigged.
Mr. Speaker, I demand that his words be taken down.
It's okay to say the court is corrupt.
Gentleman will suspend.
But not Trump is corrupting the rule of law.
Indiana, to demand that his words be taken down. The gentleman from Massachusetts will be seated. The clerk will report the words.
It's going to take some time, so let's just hang out here. We got to figure out exactly what the words were. All right, so Mr. Carl, we're gonna figure out exactly how we want to proceed here. He said stuff that's clearly out of order. Shooting the timely demand. We're gonna get the words back from the official reporters so that the clerk can read them. That's gonna take some time.
Order. The clerk will report the words.
We have a presumptive nominee for president facing 88 felony counts, and we are being prevented from even acknowledging it. These are not alternative facts. These are real facts. A candidate for President of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He is also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He is also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court, and yet in this Republican-controlled House, it is okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham. It is okay to say the jury is rigged, but not that Trump should be held accountable. It is okay to say the court is corrupt, but not Trump is corrupting the rule of law.
The chair is prepared to rule. The words of the gentleman from Massachusetts accuse the presumed nominee of the office of president of engaging in illegal activities. The presumed nominee for the office of president are according to the same treatments under the rules of the decorum in debate as a sitting president. This practice is memorialized in Section 370 of the House Rules and Manual. This is warranted even though a candidate may not have officially obtained the party's nomination once there is no reasonable dispute that the candidate will receive the nomination. The chair reaches that the conclusion in part based on the statement of the Speaker Wright of September 29, 1988. On that day, the Speaker made it clear that actual party nominees is not a prerequisite for treatments under the presided as though they are nominees. I messed that one up, I'm sorry. The chair has abolished members on the basis of numerous occasions and as recently as early today. This standard entails the application of the rules of decorum in debate. Therefore, although remarks in debate may include criticism of such candidate's official position as a candidate, it is a breach of order to refer as the candidate in terms personally offensive, whether by actually accusing or by merely insulting. Also, as such, in Section 370 of the manual, the acquisition that the president has committed a crime or even that the president has done something illegal is not in order. The chair relies on the precincts of March 19, 1988, September 10, 1998, and finds that the remarks consistently a personal attack. Without objections, the offensive words are stricken from the record.